Welcome. I'm Tammy Liebmeyer, and today I'm joined by Cecile Green and Ferananda Ibarra. We're taking an opportunity to experiment in sharing our work together as a peer-to-peer process of discovery. What I'd love to start with is us introducing ourselves, so our name, and what motivates us to do the work that we do, so that we can share a little bit about what brings us to our work. I wondered, Ferananda, if you wouldn't mind starting.
um, It's interesting that it's a question that it can be so obvious, but at the same time it shifts. It shifts every time in regards of there is a big motivation, of course, which is, well, I want to be part of the evolutionary process and to be part of an ever-increasing goodness, truth, and beauty manifestations in the world. And that's kind of the big arc why I do what I do. I can also connect to the part of like, oh, I don't feel there's a choice. You know, of course, I can choose the form. The part that is choiceless for me is the part of the commitment and the devotion to social work and to the shift in systems. And so, in my path, I've been my part of my story. I worked a lot in personal development in myself because I was quite a mess in my teenage, and then as I was going through life, I started to recognize like, wow, there's so much there, so much work that I have to do, and I wanted to kind of drift into personal master, working in something that had to do with personal development. Then the adventure for me was finding collective intelligence. And it was a journey in itself. That's those moments when you source and you know that you connect to something that is bigger than you. And collective intelligence came as a concept. I had no idea what it meant. But I knew I had to do that. And then comes the confirmations of the universe, by having a project, in less than 3 months from saying that I had a project with 19,000 accountants to do the biggest vision in Latin America. I was working with a guru and in collective intelligence, George Spohr, and a team, and we had money. I mean, it was like, yeah, okay, I get it. Yeah, that's what I had to do. I get it. And through that path, finding that we can't that a major issue for us to be able to really tap into our potential and collective intelligence as a species is very connected to money, because if we keep competing for a scarce resource, how can we fully collaborate and engage in co-creating in a different way? So for me, that kind of was a wake up. I didn't even know community currencies existed, and it was my first intro to community currencies. And then life took me into working with metacurrency and working with other projects. But I leave it there because I know we were going to other questions as well and iterations. But that's why I do what I do. I do work as well for the future generations. I trust that we can actually create a better world that works for all. Complete.
Wonderful. And where are you, Ferananda?
I call home right now Ashland, Oregon.
Wonderful. Great. And Cecile, did you want to take an opportunity to introduce yourself, where you're from, and your what motivates you?
Yeah. Well, thank you again, Tammy, for hosting this conversation. I'm really honored to be here. My name is Cecile Green. I am one of the co-founders of Round Sky Solutions, and we're based in Worcester, Vermont, which is just north of Montpelier, the capital of Vermont. And what motivates me is such a great question. So many things. I mean, like Ferananda, I am motivated to bring more goodness, truth, and beauty into the world foundationally. And For me, that's taken many forms over the course of my life, including being a farmer and now a homesteader, as well as my passion with this question of what is human social power. So my, you know, the brief synopsis of my journey was just, at some point really looking at the dilemmas that we face as a human race and being very curious about, they all seem kind of like, off in their own little camps, like everyone fighting for this thing or that thing. But I was very curious about what's the intersection, like what lies at the crosshairs of all of our issues. Like what is the central dilemma of our human race that if we could make a difference in, would make it possible for us to unpack everything else. And, due to my inquiry and research, I identified human social power as that object, kind of at the crosshairs of all of our dilemmas. And certainly was true for me in my life. And as I looked around at all of the, injustice and inequality and the wars and the climate disasters we're creating, seemed to very much align with a lens of if we could shift how we use power with each other, that we would unpack all of the capacity that we already have. It's like there is no shortage of ideas and genius out there to make a difference, but we seem to consistently run around on questions of how power is used and distributed, and even in the networks and organizations that are doing great work out there. So that's kind of been my motivation for what I do is kind of seeking that high point of leverage and then trying to construct a means forward that's more generative of goodness, beauty, and truth.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you both so much. Part of the reason why I was so inspired to bring both of you ladies together is because I feel like all three of us have a common motivation and slightly different takes on how to do it, but inclusive of each person's take. For me, I see so much potential, power, beauty, creation, that people are seeing the challenges that we're facing in the world. People are hard at work in their communities, building solutions and creating new ways to be able to work in our communities, address the challenges that we face, and share power in how to do that. And I don't think that we know quite how to do that, which is why, for me, it's so valuable to look at, to share together what it is that we're learning, and learn in real time together and share in real time together, because I think that what we can learn is very powerful, and that, yeah, there's so much potential for us to advocate for each other, to be able to understand what we're each doing so that we can be a more coherent whole and better understand as an overview, by being able to listen to people's stories and what it is that they're passionate about, what they're working on, and what they need help with. So, yeah, my intention is to learn and to listen and to ask questions so that we can create understanding together about what it is that we're doing and how we can help. And I guess I'm also deeply motivated by the challenges that we face globally. Like I think that we can all see that we're at a very powerful transformation as a species and as a global community, and the more we can connect, the more we can share our questions and our solutions and our strategies and our ways of meeting the challenges, the better, and that we can share our knowledge and wisdom together to grow and carry on. So those are my intentions.
Yay.
Great. So maybe we can just jump into our projects. I guess I'll start because this is the project for me, is exploring each other's work together in a way that allows people to share what they're doing and identify where they need help or what they can offer. And so this is this is the core project right now, to learn how to create media together as peers to explain what we're doing.
Mm.
Thank you, Tammy. Thanks for sharing your work with us.
Mm-hmm. Ferananda, did you want to just jump in and share a bit more about the projects that you've been working on?
Sure. Yeah, thank you. Well, yeah, the project that where I place most of my time and attention, that is the arc of all else, is Village Lab. And the project is very vast, is very deep in regards of what our vision is and what our mission is. Our vision is regenerative communities all around the world, and not only to build regenerative communities and support them in their growth, but also to be able to create a toroidal field of learning with each other, and it's not away from what you are touching, Tammy, because these communities of practice, these communities, we call them communities of intent, which is communities of purpose, place, and practice. And these communities are doing incredible work. We now know that innovation is happening in corporations, but it's also happening in any dorm room around the world, right? And in small communities. And communities have been leading edge in everything. I mean, talking about decision making and power sharing, and I mean, through a lot of pain and through a lot of experimentation and through all the bold, pioneering, heartfelt, we must do this. They jumped into it, in a whole systems perspective. So I in my work on collective intelligence, yeah, organizations are cool. I love them. I like working with organizations, which are communities of practice, but from communities of place, where people really choose to be with one another, where they want to gain trust, where they want to build trust in a different way, in every topic possible. You call the big ones, death, sex, money, and economics, sharing power, the huge ones. And so for me, they are pioneering crucibles, and we're so connected to them. We just had a village design workshop this weekend, and we were honored to have many people that are true communitarians, more than myself, experiencing community. And I love what happens when people are in community. Together. So Village Lab is to support them and to bring resources to not only monetary but non-monetary. Welcome back, Tammy.
I'm so sorry. Connectivity issues. I look forward to watching what you guys spoke about while that was glitching.
Yeah, it's okay. Probably it's like about Village Lab and the work that we're doing there, and for us, New Prime Economics is a big one. I think the ones where we spend most attention is the social field, like ecotech. A lot of people do and do well, and we like it. And Jeff, my partner, has a lot of experience in ecotech and appropriate technologies. But economics and social decision making, sharing power, and the way in which we generate wealth together, it's where we place a lot of our intentions. So we create tools to help people really have a languaging of gifting. They can really not only have the language, but also know how to interact with others and build different sorts of agreements where we step from the gifting of, I'm gifting you with all my heart, and then you're drowning, because you don't have your own sustainability covered. That is not okay. That is not the spirit where we're coming. It has to be a reciprocity way. So we build tools for that. And we're building a tool that, and I'll stop with that, that is called the Wealth Stewardship Model, which is, when we looked into our funding mechanisms, we went into, wow, for profit, doing this thing and building charity and struggling and putting so much energy in bringing money? No. And in the other side, for profit and all that mechanism with investors and promising 3 times their money? No. So what are the new structures and the new forms that we can bring together so that we create a new world, a new way of financing and financing the movement, really?
Mm.
So it's a deep, deep work with a lot of experimentation and prototyping and fail early, fail fast, and still like with others. And when you start doing a work, then you look around and you find many that are doing the work, and then you want to collaborate. So I think one of the edges is that of how we coordinate action and collaborate in a way that what is next in our collaboration as human species. So that's a lot of part of the work. And meta currency is the other project I'm a lot part of. But I don't want to take all the time. I think I'll probably go with the Village Lab, and if it comes again, I can share about meta currency. In the nutshell, is we're building the infrastructure, technological infrastructure for the new economy, and also doing a lot of prototyping in social fields.
Wonderful. Great. Cecile, did you want to do a bit of an overview?
Sure. I just also wanted to say thank you so much, Ferananda. It's for being out there and doing this incredible work. It's so needed, and it's so inspiring to see and feel you stepping in and creating this whole incredible network of empowered individuals. It's beautiful, beautiful work. And definitely a lot of overlap and resonance for me in the sense around this question of social power and decision making and sharing, and how do we create these new forms of living and working together that are more effective and are not kind of mired in the same dynamics that we've seen unfold for millennia in our human social structures, which result in the incredible inequality that we're living in today, and the capacity to destroy our biosphere without really having any hold on that, any means of really turning that around, or very little, I should say. It certainly looks like at the moment. So yeah, my major project is this body of work that I call CoLab, COLLAB, and it was inspired from my participation in quite a few different social ventures. Cooperatives have been part of my history, and I see them as a really useful format for kind of bridging this place that we're at between these crazy polarities of being a nonprofit or a for-profit. The cooperative model is very powerful, and has a lot of potential, and yet even as part of whether it was cooperatives or intentional communities or even spiritual communities that I've been a part of, I noticed this trend for there to be this expectation that we could just put good people together with some good intentions, and we could reliably get something good at the end of the day, a good product from the organization, a happy group of people working together. And truth was, that happens sometimes, but more often than not, it didn't. And it was so frustrating. It's so demoralizing. So many people actually traumatized by the experience of trying to work together collaboratively. And to me, that was untenable. There's all this good intention, all this powerful energy, good insight, good capacity to innovate, and yet it would keep running aground. Boom, keep running aground on power. At least that was my insight. And so I took that and did a bunch of research and married that with my own experiential work for 25 years as a social venturist in different types of organizations, and produced a minimally sufficient set of communication practices, which give us these pointers through what's a very, very complex territory, but helps keep us straight. It helps keep, well, straight's the wrong word, but actually collaborating generatively. So we're leaving these conversations with our hearts full and good work happening and better relationships rather than, you know, what can often happen. And you know, one of the things that's really exciting to me about this is uncovering that the mechanics of this are not, this is not rocket science. It is deeply embedded in our history, and it's deeply hidden behind our eyes. Like, we don't see a lot of these patterns, they're implicit, and therefore we act them out even if that's not really our intention, but it's not rocket science to shift it. And 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 that's played itself out as CoLab has gone out into the world and is in use in various organizations. It's totally learnable, and it makes a huge difference, and that's deeply inspiring to me. And I know that there's a lot of experimentation with how do we do this going on out there. So excited to hear more from you, Ferananda, and Tammy, you too. It's like this is the incubator, right? We are the incubator of this new thing, and it's so needed, and it's emergent, and there's, you know, any number of different combinations of how we get there, but really, really happy to be, you know, talking and sharing our wisdom here together, because for me it's central. It's like, what are the patterns of healthy shared power, and how do we teach that to the rest of the world, because it's deeply needed. Yeah.
Fair, I'd love to hear your reflections on how because you've experienced some of the same challenges in working in community, I'm sure, because it is a part of the human condition. And I'd love to hear a little bit about how you've been able to share power on the ground and create that container to be able to do that in a good way.
Mm.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. That's a generative question. And I would want to start by naming that in the collective intelligence work, the way that we've given to these pieces that we are sharing, and very specifically in this conversation about decision making and economics, is we call them invisible architectures. They're invisible not because we cannot see them, but because we're not trained to see them, or because we don't have the social technologies to see them. And so if we don't decide, is what you were saying, Cecile, is like you can put llamas, and for if they're going to share power equally, they're going to make decisions equally, and they want to be, you know, create harmonious systems, they'll have to go into that question of how you share power, unless it's a pyramid and it's clear who leads and who doesn't, and you know. But when you want to go further, then you really need to think about what is that you want to do. And there are many strategies and very beautiful, beautiful processes out there to do so. And there's, of course, the struggle is there. It's just like, it doesn't matter how pure of heart you are. You know, money is money. If you put money in hands of Dalai Lamas, they'll end up with the same Pareto effect if they don't change the rules, if they don't change the game. And I think what we're speaking about here is create new agreements. New agreements are the way in which we'll be harmonious, be able to create harmonious systems in which where we can live and play and work and thrive and regenerate the planet. So yeah, to answer to your question, Tammy, in Village Lab, we have a broad understanding of decision making, and we've seen and studied many, you know, like holacracy and sociocracy and dynamic alignment and different modalities. We kind of go into, each group has to decide its own. You know, each group has its own body. It's going to be, it depends on what type of organism they want to be, how tight they want to be, how intimate they want to be with each other, how many layers of decision making are there. You know, it's not the same a group of geeks that have to decide on code and then they can fork it and create their own, than a community that's going to live together, that is going to share the most intimate aspects of themselves and families together, and they have to build a massive amount of trust. And it's not the same a community that may want to do homesteading than a community that wants to go into full sharing of ownership. So there is different organisms with different purposes, and it's my belief, and I'm not an expert in decision making by no means, but I do have a good understanding and practice that the agreements have to serve the purpose first. And then there is an interesting aspect of invisible architectures, which is seeing, they call invisible architectures because they're like the DNA of the social organism. So if you have a bad decision-making process or bad economics, that will create a certain social outcome and a certain shape of the collective body of the social organism. So if they are going to create those social outcomes, it's very interesting for groups, and that's a thing that Village Lab is passionate about. It's like, okay, let's experiment with this way of decision making, but let's look into the social outcome that that's going to produce. So if you community want to do homesteading, and some of you want to do shared ownership, and some of you want to do the middle, and you have all the spectrum, that's going to produce a certain social outcome. Let's see it. And then being able to dynamic steer into something else if that is not serving our true purpose and the harmony and alignment of the system. So that is her take. In Village Lab, we have what we call decision-making recipe, and it originally comes from the group called MetaMaps, which have been exploring a lot of these questions on value accounting, and it's interesting that it gives certain autonomy to the teams, where teams can decide what is the process of decision-making that they want. But I'm very interested as well in the whole study that is coming from reinventing organizations, and how some organizations like Gore have some simplicity of decision making. They say if you have a culture map where you have clarity of your beliefs, your principles, your behaviors, your values, you will need less decision making. And if people know, for example, that there is the concept of water line, and everybody knows their water line, then they feel the confidence of telling their people anyone can make any decision they want, as long as they consider the people that are going to be affected by that decision, and that they share it with an expert. I mean, that is a level of trust. And we've been seeing that when you give trust to people, they raise up for the occasion. So I'm very interested on that, regardless of the stage of consciousness where they're at. So I'm very interested on that, because it's the aspects of the system that if you shift the system and you create a good DNA from the system, then people are going to, regardless if they're religious, Catholics, or if they are like teal, I don't know, enlightened beings, or corporate people, capitalists in their heart, if you created good DNA, what is that outcome? So yes, thank you for the question, and it's I love talking with you ladies. You're in mute, Tammy.
Oh, right. Yes, sorry about that. I've got some traffic just outside of this room that I was trying to save everyone from. Cecile, I wondered if you could take a moment to just dive a little bit more deeply into kind of the processes that you were sharing around shared leadership in communities and in organizations.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the prompt, Tammy. And first of all, a lot of what you shared, Ferananda, really resonates. This question of what is our DNA as an organization, and how do we structure that in a way that gets us the outcomes that we want? As the DNA unfolds and reproduces itself, are we going in the right direction? And And truth is, as you mentioned, that it's one of the core pieces of the DNA which really helps is this concept of that being able to dynamically steer, like to have something that is minimally sufficient, that's good enough for now, let's give it a try. But the key piece is how do we continue to evolve this so it doesn't get stuck in any particular, understanding of its processes that aren't serving anymore. And so CoLab really is a kind of a I think of it as it's an operating system that people can plug and play that gives us, like, illuminates this entire territory of what is our operating system, what is our DNA, what is it, and then how do we change it? Because it's one of the components that makes it brings out our collective intelligence. It harnesses the collective intelligence for constructing a generative DNA. And because this territory is so little known, simply kind of enabling people to see, well, what are the components of this DNA? What is it made of? What are the various blocks, and how do they go together, or don't they go together? And getting like a primer to start on that you can kind of see the whole territory is really, I find, a very powerful way to give people the capacity to then pick and choose what's the right DNA for their process. Because one of the things I found in my research is that often people will focus on like one component of the DNA, let's say decision making, but don't really see that it's deeply interlinked with how you handle interpersonal conflict. Or likewise, what are the expectations we have for each other around personal development? How is it, how am I, if I'm in a relationship with you, whether it's an intentional community or whether it's a corporate work environment, we are impacted by each other all the time. And what are the expectations we hold each other to for our own growth and development? So I was very curious about the comprehensive map, because what I kept seeing again and again is we get these partial solutions to the DNA that fell apart, that didn't actually hold up under pressure or under development. And so at the moment, I'm working with a map of this DNA that has 7 different conversations. My goal was, again, to be comprehensive, because without the comprehensiveness, it seems like power is very squirrely and it will find its way any way it can, right? And this is from good people, right? I'm not, with good intentions, good people, power is still going to do its thing. Partially because of just what we've learned. And so anyways, the 7 conversations I found, these are conversations that are already happening. They're purpose, so what is the organizational purpose? What's our vision, mission, and values? And then there's the business model, which is this question of how do we exchange money? And not just money, but our value, like deeper than money, like what is this value we're offering? And what value do we receive in return in order to balance, so that it has to balance, otherwise the organization can't sustain itself. The next conversation is strategy, which I found really helpful to focus around the question of what are our priorities? What are we going to focus on? What are the initiatives we're going to take together to get towards that model, to get towards our purpose for now? So priorities, again, are constantly shifting, but how do we have that conversation and stay aligned with each other? Then there's a governance conversation, which in this context, I define governance as all of our shared agreements about who has authority for what, including how we make decisions, but also at a more kind of detailed level, things like, what roles do we have? What accountabilities do those roles have? What policies do we need in order to stay aligned with each other? And one of the key pieces in governance is this concept of scoping. And so it really is a question of where are the boundaries of work that each team has. And within that boundary of work, perhaps most importantly, that team is authorized to self-organize. So they're accountable themselves to their own goals. They set their goals, they're accountable to them. But without that kind of paradigm being very explicit in a DNA, it's difficult to make that happen. And So anyways, governance is a really, really powerful conversation. Operations, all of the daily details, like how do we be collaboratively accountable to each other? Because there again, we come from a society where we're accountable to the man, right? That's the only way it works, is that you've got someone over your head like making you do stuff. And we don't actually have the tools or knowledge to know how to be collectively accountable. And so processes and conversations for that collective accountability is super critical. Then there's the interpersonal, which I mentioned, that kind of field of relatedness between everyone. And last but not least is personal development, our own individual growth, and how do we continue to lean in? How do we take feedback? How do we make vehicles for generative feedback so it's not doesn't degenerate into yelling at someone when you're frustrated with them, but there's a structure for getting that feedback to people easily. So those 7 conversations seem to kind of hold everything that an organization needs, and so I see it as kind of the backbone of the DNA, and then each organization has different kind of components to each of those, different agreements that they're going to come up with, or different ways they're going to be collaboratively accountable, but they're not then missing major pieces of their DNA as they go into constructing an operating system for themselves. Yeah.
That's powerful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing that work. I think it's so important to be able to break it down into segments so that they're chewable chunks.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I'm really struck by both of your works, both of your bodies of work, is that we're continuously kind of making the invisible visible.
Yes.
And that there's all of these things ways that we've done things in the past, and new models for how to do things, and we're testing them. We're still learning, and there's not a lot of models around how to do that well. And it's there's a good friend and colleague of mine, Dawn Morrison, who talks about she's an Indigenous leader here in British Columbia, and she talks about decolonizing our approach to things and how we do work. And so this has been of great interest as far as really looking at the systems that we're embedded in and how do we change that, because there's a lot of what we do in society that's based on models that don't serve humanity but rather serve corporations or serve ways to be able to take value and take it out of communities and to be able to give leverage to communities and people. And yet we're continuously meeting this place where there's a lot of assumptions that we all sit on. And so it's thank you so much for taking some time to really unpack that and to see that the more that we see, we need to see about how we need to change these fundamental assumptions and this invisibility that we're kind of pushing up against with our new ways of being in relationship, being in community, and doing our work in the world.
So true. Nicely said, Tammy. One of again the really fundamental pieces that I found key to a healthy organizational DNA is this like a continuous process of being able to surface what's implicit and make it explicit, and explicitly working as opposed to what's usually implicitly not working. And having a simple set of processes for that is deeply powerful, because then we can actually harness our collective intelligence to continue this process of making what's implicit explicit in a way that's more generative. And it can be done at this just very micro, daily, like rhythmic level that's just incredibly powerful when played out over time, and incredibly generative of that trust that, yes, we can trust the collective and each other through having a good set of processes that enable us to continuously improve what we're doing.
So I'd love to jump in if we can. We've been doing this already, but to make it a little more explicit, what are some ways that our work can serve each other? Where does our work meet? And yeah, let's jump into some of that. Ferananda, I'm going to chuck you in the hot seat again.
You're getting the habit of doing that.
That's terrible. Okay, you got to break all habits. Next time.
Oh, well, it's very obvious that our work is very aligned, and that if we would sit together, we would just have hours and hours and hours of powerful conversation. As I hear the practices, I want to go deeper, and I want to share my own and share yours. And this weekend we had a village design workshop, and we purposely put 4 facilitators, myself and Jeff and Jamaica Stevens from Reinhabiting the Village and Village Lab, and Carl Sturr, who does restorative justice systems and restorative systems in general. We didn't plan much, and we didn't really prepare. We met for 2 hours, and then we stepped together and did a 2 days and a half workshop, and it was just a blast. Because we knew each other so well of our topics. That the weaving was the curious part, of all of us feeling like, oh, I have to not be complete or be complete with this piece. And then, so it's like learning how to improvise together, right? Like an orchestra. So you know your instrument so well that you're able to play jazz. That's the kind of the way of doing jazz. So I'm wondering about what is the jazz that we can play together. Because in times like these, agility is being called for as one of the practices that we want to be able to acquire and master as we go and step into with other, I recognize you, Cecile and Tammy, as masters in your own fields. So as we step in fields of mastery, where, we have mastery in some things and not in others, but we're at the same time teaching and learning, right? So I learned so much this weekend just as being a participant, and then I learned so much about myself by stepping into a field with other 3 facilitators, and then I learned so much about the people that were there because we also gave space for the collective. That is incredible. So I'm wondering about that space, agility, and learning. And so holding that in our center, really not having a particular form, but just like starting the conversation there.
Wonderful. Thoughts, Cecile?
Yeah, well, that's a lovely image. I really resonate a lot with that, Ferananda. And I too, one of my practices is ecstatic dance, and so to that metaphor of like improvisational like interaction, it's one of the most ecstatic and joyful experiences I've had personally. Is that improvised relationship and that dynamic kind of flow with each other. So thank you for that image. And concretely, I'm curious, where you all are at with your village lab. Like, what are some of the major initiatives that you're undertaking at this point? And I'm not sure that this is a helpful way to go, but I think I might need more information to figure out, where is it that I could concretely support your work and vice versa. But yeah, so that a little more information might help. I know that some of the things I can offer at the moment is that if you're ever, you have a course or a product or any way in which you'd like to get the word out about Village Lab, I'd be more than happy to kind of feature you in our newsletter and also on social media. So please keep that in mind. And yeah, I'd be very curious to to find other ways to concretely support your work.
Thank you. Thank you. Should I respond to that, Tammy, or you wanna
Yes,
interject something? Okay. Well, my partner is right now in Vermont, so I might, if you want, give him your coordinates. and a face-to-face meeting could really be helpful. And there might be something with what he's playing in Vermont that it might be even interesting, because he's playing with an organization that is wants to bring community solar. And for us, organizations or communities that just go like, oh, install my solar panels, that's not interesting. If they go into, oh, we want to make decision-making processes installing solar panels and seeing how that impacts our economic field, now we're interested. It's like, how do we with the whole systems design? And I think we can go very deep with him in regards to what Village Lab does. I think that the face-to-face has something very particular about it that is enchanting. In the surface level, what I can tell you is that we do a lot people ask a lot to us about decision making and power sharing, and I really like the structure that you're naming, the 7 structure. I could offer a conversation about it if you want, and see what it is that we see together, like in regards of being a map, and we know the map is never the territory, but I was wondering about some aspects and maybe providing some feedback in regards to that, showing you other maps, so there might be some female witchcraft mapping, jam that we can do and offer to others, as part of what we do. So I'm opening that up to see how the economic system fits in those 7, because we are shifting. And of course, you mentioned cooperatives as new economic systems for organizations. What others are there as possibilities, right? Now that we have blockchain technologies coming, decentralized autonomous organizations, smart contracts. Pamela knows a lot about that, and she's playing with Sensorica as well. So I think there is some interesting aspects that we can potentially see together. As I think that I sense that here we are like, oh, like, yeah, let's go and see the map. Okay, so let's destroy the map, build a new one. Yeah, so that are my first.
Continuous.
And of course, supporting social media for your workshops, all that. It's easy, and at the same time, it's good to stay in touch. Those loose links that sometimes don't create certain synchronicities and serendipities.
Yeah. Lovely. Well, thank you. I would love to meet your partner. That sounds like a perfect kind of next step, and likewise, I'd be happy to explore, what could work for some kind of a conversation around this territory of our working together as humans, and explore maps and tear them up and start over. So yes, perhaps we can figure out some details via email afterwards. But yeah, and I realized in talking with you guys that one of the things that I could use support with concretely is we're in a process of understanding how people articulate their needs for this area of work, which is yet really lacking a good language even to identify it. And so everyone really kind of comes to it from a slightly different angle, like the 9 men and the elephant, the 9 blind men. Everyone's feeling something different and claims they really feel something different, but it's actually the same thing, right? And so one of our big challenges as an organization is how do we adequately communicate what is this amorphous and fairly complex idea in ways that are very, very concrete and meet people. And so I have a survey which if each of you were willing to take 5 minutes and fill out, would help me kind of understand some of that language. So if you're up for it, I'll send it around after we're done.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Definitely up for it. Yes, very interested actually. Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And Tammy, how can we support you?
Well, doing these podcasts and just exploring, like, how can this work? How can we use having conversations together that shares our work, looks at next steps, and how can we use this to broadly shed light on the movement through specific stories of what people are doing. So if either of you would consider being a part of another podcast, lead a podcast yourself. I'm hoping that people do see the value in what it is to meet together, share what we do, and see what next steps we can do, because that's another way of piece by piece building inputs into a map, so that we can meet each other. We can share who it is that we are and have a shareable file that we can then do outreach to other people, to be able to make clear, as well as take those actual steps. Great, you get to meet Jeff. That's wonderful, right? And take these next steps together so that we can both share, show what we do, and also be able to understand more broadly the wider and broader movement. One of the reasons over the last couple of years, really, I've seen so much powerful work from next economy people and community development folks and activist communities, and a common piece is that we don't know enough about each other. And so I would love if either of you wanted to participate in more podcasts with others, or wanted to do the practice yourself in your communities in the ways that would help to serve moving your own projects forward. So I'd love to hear your thoughts and what and feedback actually on how useful you feel this process is, and if we can tweak some things moving forward to make it better, more generative, more and better serve the movement.
Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yes, I think so, and I would be delighted to do more of these with you, Tammy. So just, keep me posted. If I think someone that I think would be good for a threesome, I will definitely let you know for sure. And I will also thank you for opening the idea that this is something that I could also do with other folks and then share back with you to kind of build the momentum here. I hadn't really registered that possibility, so that's out there. And happy to also offer some feedback on today and the process too. I don't know if you want that right now or what would be best.
I think it's great. I think it's great right now to have as part of the podcast.
Okay.
Before we go to feedback, I want to answer to that piece of Tammy that's saying that, one of the aspects we need help with in Village Lab is storytelling and telling a story and having different people. This is a language piece, and also when you get to be so complex, you kind of see yourself, but it's very difficult to get out to be able to see yourself in a way that will resonate with others. So that's a piece that I wanted to talk to you about, Tammy, since you're such, into storytelling and media. And what I hear about the podcast is great, and perhaps there could be, because there is such a resonance with a certain field of, talking about systems, perhaps maybe there's a series that even if I do it my own or you do it my own, that we can support each other in creating the buzz for that, because I know that's part of the challenge, right? I mean, otherwise we have no other eyeballs or audience, and then our work is not as impactful as it could be. And sometimes, it's not, I'm part of a post-growth alliance, and it's not that difficult, to set it up and to set something up that is a very easy mechanism for us to be able to support each other through social media, for example. Just like a little nugget, a little piece of the conversation and the support that we can give to each other. And as part of what I'm developing with Jamaican students from Having Clean the Village and with Village Lab is a series of content strategy, series of workbooks, series of papers that we can give to support communities and organizations to be able to do certain processes themselves as well and to be able to scale. And it will be great to have a conversation with you about it, and if you wanna, I can create the invite, and then we just jump into it, and what a good content strategy could include, and that's not only for Village Lab, because I think that what's happening is that as we go more into coalition building, we are stepping into fields where we build organisms of organisms.
Yes.
And I haven't again with the question and the frame of agility and the of what would be simple components to stack functions with what we're already doing, but that we could support so that there is a leverage for all the organizations included. So that it's stacking functions, it's agile, it creates a generative conversation. We do more than we can do alone, and it still doesn't require us to put more hours in the schedule. And so I'm very interested in that conversation. And I know it can happen. I have ideas about it.
Wonderful. That is exactly it. Yes. Thank you so much. And yeah, I really appreciate that. It is creating time almost, because you're able to do that stacking. I loved how you described Fernanda. So I note that we are a little past time, and perhaps we can just do a short feedback on how this worked for us today, and any feedback on how we can make it better.
Thanks, Tammy. I can jump in if you'd like. So what I loved is I felt like I was coming to Christmas today with you both. It was this wonderful sense of expectation and anticipation and surprise, and I knew I was going to get to meet someone very special and get a chance to connect more with you, Tammy, and that was that has been wonderfully true, and that's me in a deep way, which I really am grateful to both of you for, and I feel nourished by by our connection and by knowing that you're out there, Ferananda, and doing your work, and that looking forward to ways in which we can support, synergize, and each other going forward. So there's that anticipation now looking forward to what may come of our connection. I wonder, Tammy, if you felt like, since this was a three-way, but you were kind of hosting, and it was a lot about Ferananda and I getting to know each other, if you felt sufficiently included in the process here today, in the dialogue, and if there was some way that could be done better, if needed. I don't know, but that's a question I'm holding. Is how did it work for you, Tammy, and what's needed to kind of sustain a really full conversation, because I know, and you and I have had this conversation, Tammy, that it's really easy for the interviewer to kind of fall behind, to not be seen and to not be included, and that doesn't really feel like the paradigm that any of us want to live into. So one question, and then I guess the one other really concrete thing that I could contribute to this process going forward is that I'm a very visual person, and so having like a Google Doc that we could record have a list of the questions, and then maybe a list of some of the key points that come out, and a recording of maybe the next actions that we've agreed to. I find that it's so simple, and it's so powerful to like have that visual reference and the commitment that yes, I've committed to do X, because it's right there, and then I can even go back to it later and pick it up if I need to. So that might be an interesting piece of the structure of your dialogues here that could help.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, the piece around the interviewer, I am looking to kind of break that down a little bit better, and so today was a good practice in that, but I don't exactly know how to do it. And so yeah, I'm playing with that edge, and I think that there is a certain modeling that happens through listening, and we all do that. We've all done that so beautifully today. So yeah, I think I'm gonna think on that and watch this and see where that was true and how I could be different in it to bring my work more forward. but I kind of feel like there's a little bit of that invisibility in that we talked about earlier in the session around I'm trying to create a frame, but the frame is a little behind us, and I don't exactly know what that looks like in a truly shared power way, in a way that really allows that space for what is to emerge to emerge. And I definitely felt that I had the space and the ability to do that in our conversation. And so I'm going to thank you for that feedback, and I'll reflect on that from our work today. And I just really so appreciate being and to grow these kind of peer-to-peer processes. So, yeah. Ferananda.
Prototyping.
Oh, and Cecile, on the written part, yes. That's. I think that would be great. I find it difficult to take notes when I'm listening and holding space, but I think that's really important. Sorry, Fernanda.
No, it's fine. Thank you. I felt really comfortable. I think that you know, sometimes the work of the interviewer or the space holder seems to be more like the listening, right? More receptive, less active. But I find that it's very active because it's really holding the space for potential, and it's creating the safe space for others, and as well weaving your pieces in a way that they add to the conversation. And I love when John Kelvin says the conversation is the prototype. Yeah, so I really enjoy that, and I felt that in this space, and I felt the potential. And I kudos to what Cecile said around the collective visual space. I'm a visual person as well, but also I've seen in my work in collective intelligence that it's about the whole, and the wealth is in the whole, and not only in the parts. And I think that a process that could help people see what came out of the conversations after the conversations, even if it's not during, but the harvesting after, will enable not only you but to the field to start seeing each other, seeing itself, and the patterns to start to emerge. And I think that, yes, there are things that we mentioned here that are very good next easy steps. And you know, so it would be great to know what that is, and to follow up on that. And it's not a matter of time and next week, and you know, it's a matter of ease and flow and rightness of time and space. And in collective intelligence, we could call you the holoptician, which means you are the holding of the conversations. You're like the coach seeing what's happening in the football field. You know, so you have that capacity, and you're leading so many conversations and weaving people, but helping us see the field is going to be very important.
Wonderful. So I just want to thank you both so much, and thank you for going over time as well. I really appreciate that. And so what I'll commit to moving forward is I'll create a document that we can all contribute to, and also watch the broadcast, so that. And I would be curious, is everyone open to sharing this broadcast widely?
Yes.
Wonderful. And so I'll share this link with you so that we can all share it and continue our learning journey together.
Wonderful.
And just thank you both so much for taking the time and for the work that you're doing in the world. I really value it.
Thank you.
It's good to meet you, Ferananda.
Nice to meet you, Cecile. Hope for more.
Yes.
All right. Until next time.
Bye.
This has been Green, Ferananda Ibarra, and Teddy Lee Meyer. Thank you.